Alright guys, we gotta talk about Cardfight Vanguard Deer Days 2 here again. Since the other day we did get some new info on this game during Bushiroad's little strategy presentation thing that they have ever so often. And we actually got some pretty cool news because they announced that this game is going to include a vintage fight mode that will allow you to use old cards from the original Vanguard series from back in 2011, so back in the very beginnings of the franchise. So this is something that I sort of speculated about in my first Deer Days 2 video, because I noticed on the deck builder screen that up at the top it did say standard, and I wondered why it would say that if standard was the only format that was available in the game. And now we know it's because standard isn't the only format. We're going to have vintage format as well. So that's very cool, getting to use those old cards again. Which I didn't expect them to immediately jump to the oldest stuff first. I thought, maybe if we were lucky, we might get V-Series, and then maybe they could work their way back from there. But they're doing the oldest stuff first. So we don't really know a whole lot about this mode. What we do know is that you're going to be able to play it in both CPU fights and online against other people. Now the online mode is going to be unranked only, so it will just be casual fights. But beyond that, they also did confirm that beyond just basic CPU fights, there is going to be story content that goes along with the vintage fight mode as well. So that's pretty cool that we're getting something more than just, basic CPU battles. There will be some new story content to go with it. Now, as for the card pool, they have confirmed that at launch, it is only going to have everything up through the original Booster Set 5. So up through Awakening of Twin Blades, which was the set with the first Cross Rides and with Majesty Lord Blaster, as well as Extra Boosters 1 and 2. Which Extra Booster 1 was comic style, which was just random manga cards. And then Extra Booster 2 was the first dedicated Bermuda Triangle set, Banquet of Divas. So it will include basically everything through the first season of the anime, just up to right before the beginning of the Limit Break era. Which also begs the question of if this format is going to be clan fight rules or extreme fight rules, since clan fight was a thing that wasn't implemented until a little bit later in the game. And if clan fight is a thing, then some clans are going to be totally unplayable with just this card pool, because things like Nubatama and Great Nature only have I think 4 cards available. So if they're not splashable in other decks, then obviously you won't be able to play those clans at all. However, they did say that this is just what's going to be available at launch, so that does imply that they might do updates for this mode to add even more older cards to the game, which, knowing them, that probably means more $70 DLC card passes, which I really hope not. I hope they would add the vintage mode cards and free updates. I know that's probably too much to hope for considering how they handled Deer Days 1. But I would like it if the free updates added vintage cards and you kept the paid DLC to just the new, D-Series stuff. I think that would be a lot better way to handle it. Another thing that jumped out at me was when they were talking about the story mode portion, they did only mention a prologue. So it might be possible that only the prologue of the vintage story is included in the base game. And any future updates they do, whether they be paid or not, might include more chunks of that story. Which, that's something that I did say that I would like to see in my last Deer Days 2 video, that they should add more story content to go along with any new cards they add to the game, so you have something more worthwhile to do with those new cards besides just, facing CPU opponents over and over or taking them online. So that seems like something that's at least more possible now, and that is one of the things I'd like to see. So hopefully they do continuously add to this vintage story mode, as well as the standard story mode as well. But of course the other big question that's on everyone's mind is, if they are going to add more cards to the vintage mode, how far are they going to go with this? So we have everything through Season 1 right now. If they do another update, the logical thing would be to start adding Limit Break era stuff. Will they go to the end of the Limit Break era and stop? Will they add the Legion era stuff? Will they potentially go into the G era cards and start adding all of those as well? Could they finish out the original /G format and start adding V-Series cards at some point? Maybe it's possible that their ultimate goal for this game is to slowly but surely add all the old cards, add all the V-Series cards, and then continuously update the D-Series stuff, and potentially at some point implement a premium format in the game as well, which is something that would be really cool to see, even though premium is kind of a complete fucking mess. But having that as an option in video game format would be something really cool. If they do end up going that far with it, which I know is kind of pie in the sky at this point, but if they add all these different formats and go all the way to full premium, then one thing I would personally like to see, I hope they keep the G era stuff as like a semi-separate format from Vintage, since, when they introduced Stride, the power creep got so out of control at that point that a lot of those old cards just became completely obsolete and unusable. So if they're going to add all these other formats, one thing I'd really like for them to do is have Vintage format be just like everything from the original series up through the end of the Legion era, and then have like G Vintage that includes all those cards plus the G era stuff. So in that format, you would have your G deck and, be able to stride and all that. They could even make the G Vintage format clan fight rules and make just the Vintage format extreme fight rules, which would be closer to how it was in real life as well. So I would like to see those be kept semi-separate, which, again, if they go that far and do all that, we could have Vintage format, we could have G Vintage, we could have a V-Series format, and then, of course, the standard D-Series format, which the majority of the base game will be, and then also potentially a premium format as well. So that would give us a total of 5 different formats we could play in the game, which would be very, very cool. Again, this is me getting way out into speculation land again, but, this is where my mind goes when I start seeing these old things. So we don't know if any of that's going to happen right now. All we know is that we will have the Season 1 stuff to play around with, which is very cool. It'll be fun to take that nostalgia trip and play with those old cards again. We can build things like Tsukuyomi and Stern Blauklüger and, King of Knights Alfred and all that stuff. I can maybe even rebuild my old PBO deck at some point, hopefully. Another thing about the card pool, they didn't mention anything about the original trial decks or any promo cards from back then. So I don't totally know what they're going to do with that. I'd imagine the trial decks at least would be included, since most of the trial deck cards were in the main sets anyway. So hopefully those are in, just so we get those handful of exclusives like Gold Rutile and stuff. And hopefully we get some of the old promo cards. I would like to see stuff like Alfred Early and Cursed Lancer, things like that. Death Anchor. So hopefully those end up getting included. They haven't said anything about the trial decks or promo cards for the D-Series stuff yet either. So they'll probably announce that sometime before launch, but they haven't mentioned it yet. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see about all of that. Though this is pretty exciting news, I am really glad that we're getting something like this. And it at least opens the door just a crack for us getting a lot of other really potentially cool stuff in the future as well. So it'll be exciting to see how far they go with this, but even right now, it is something that is getting me even more hyped up for this game. But anyhow, I guess that's all I got to say, so lots of luck to you and yours.